Okay, everyone, welcome. This is supposed to usually be the Wednesday share, but I was on a Zoom thing yesterday and wasn't sure I'm going to make it on time. So this will be the share today. This is making up for Wednesday night, the Dvar Malchus share. So this is part 2 of Parshas Emor. So last week we began, and the idea that the Rebbe is discussing over here is the idea which began already the Shabbos before that in Parshas Achrei Mois Kedoshim. It's a very fascinating idea, and that is that Geula is really made up of the word Geula. Geula and Geula is the same word. Geula, it means exile, Geula means redemption, and how intertwined exile and redemption are. That redemption is not a new thing. Redemption is uncovering the godliness of exile itself. When we uncover the godliness of exile, that's redemption. And the way we proceed, the way we transition from exile, which we're so fed up with, we're so done with exile, and we proceed from exile to redemption, is not by running away from an old distant past and deleting it from our memory drive. That's not what it's all about, but rather it's about discovering, bringing godliness into every aspect of our life. That's what it is. Bringing the godly into everything in our life, uplifting every element of our life to live it in the godly way. And when we do that, then the very same exile becomes liberated and it becomes geula. And that means we're not going to lose anything. People have a worry, they have a scare, they're worried that they're going to lose something when Mashiach will come. It's true, it's going to be great, but my possessions, my accomplishments, my achievements, my friends, my acquaintances, all the good stuff that I've done and achieved and accomplished, I'm not going to have them anymore because it's going to be like a new world, maybe much better, but not the same that I've had before. And I don't want to relinquish this because I'm feeling kind of comfortable with what we have. Now, being comfortable not necessarily is the best thing, but still, I feel kind of it's familiar, and I'm used to it, and I like it, and to go into a whole new reality, even if it's better, we're afraid to do so. So the Rebbe over here is easing that fear. He's releasing that fear and saying whatever is positive and good in your life is coming with you. You're not losing anything. You're not going to have to pack one suitcase and leave your possessions at home. All your stuff are coming with you. Like we find, and we discussed last week, from Egypt, they took everything out of Egypt. But not only that, even Egypt itself acknowledged God. That means that there was a redemption for Egypt. It wasn't that the Jews abandoned Egypt, and they ran away. Even Egypt itself was redeemed in the sense that they were not anymore in their constricted state of moichin, which means their awareness, their consciousness wasn't stuck anymore in their limitness that worshipped nature, but they were able to see the divine energy within nature, recognize it, and even act upon it. How did they act upon it? By participating in the redemption. They assisted the Jewish people in the redemption. They contributed of their wealth to the redemption. So two things come out as we discussed last week. Number one is that the movement, the going from exile to redemption, is by revealing the Aleph, which is God, in the redemption itself, not going elsewhere, but in the current state that you're in right now, connect to Hashem in it, discover the godly in it. That's number one. And number two, all your experiences that you're going to have in the future are all from the Galus. The Galus, like you find, the Jewish people were able to build a Mishkan, a sanctuary for God. The gold and silver they had and they put into it all came from exile. So it was the materials of the exile itself that create the redemption. The materials of the exile create the redemption, and during exile itself, our avoda to go to the redemption is not to reject the exile, but to uncover godliness in the exile. When we discover the Aleph in the Geula, it becomes Geula. Then he asked the question, this is where we left off last week. He asked, if Geula would mean just the godliness of nature. As an exile, we experience nature without the divine. And that can be problematic. That leads to all kinds of, that itself is the root of the problem. when you have an existence, a godless existence, that itself is death, is really bad, but that will lead actually to illness, to famine, to a lack in everything, because nature is not meant to operate without the Eibishter, without God. That's the way God creates it, that it conceals on its divinity, and during the time of exile, that concealment only intensifies and becomes so much stronger, and the lie becomes more obstructive. So when Geula comes, we get rid of the lies and we uncover the truth, and that's why the very exile itself becomes liberated. It's almost like you don't have to leave Mitzrayim. Even if you stay in Mitzrayim, you can live in the land of Goshen, have a yeshiva, connect to God, and be in an elevated state. That's already Geula. But that's not the case. The Jewish people didn't stay in Egypt. Eventually they left Egypt and they went to Eretz Yisroel, and they went to a land that flows milk and honey, which means that their new life was not just a discovery in their old life, an enhancement to their old life. There were a lot of new perks that were given to them. And spiritually as well, they didn't just discover the divinity of nature, they discovered the transcendental truths of God shared with them by the giving of the Torah, and where God revealed himself on much higher levels. Even by Yetzias Mitzrayim, it says that in addition to getting to realizing that there is a balabayas, that there is a master to nature and to the world, they got to see, as it says within, Nigla Aleim HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chavoide be'atzmai, God himself, especially by Matan Torah, where they had an encounter in where Hashem refers to that as Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am God your God, which is infinitely beyond the divinity that's embedded within creation, as will later be elaborated today. So, and that's even by Mitzrayim, and how much more so when we're talking about the future redemption, the Geula Hasidah, which is far surpassing it, to the point that there's going to be a new heaven and a new world. Asher ani oisei, that Mashiach, and especially knowledge in God beyond just the realigning science and discovering the divine particle in science, but revelations from beyond, which is what really is going to make up the bulk of the Messianic experience. If that's the case, why is that called Geula, meaning Goyla plus Aleph, if that has nothing to do with Goyla, or so it seems, and nothing to do with exile? This is the new levels of the divinity coming from the future. That's the question. So the Rebbe answers in Perek Daled, this is what we were holding. He says that in the letter Aleph, if we examine the letter Aleph, there's three interpretations to the letter Aleph. That means with an Aleph. Yes, he says, Goyla, the meaning of Geula is one thing, Goyla plus an Aleph. And you're right, Geula is much more than just the divinity that runs nature, the godly powers within the world, what we call Koyach HaPoyel B'nifal, the power of the maker that is within the artist, puts in their artistic talents in the art that they do. And so isn't necessarily that you got a snapshot of the entire human being just because they're art. Obviously, art can be very telling. A lot of a person's emotions, feelings, and experiences go into the art that they do. Actually, their art does give us a deeper picture into it's a window into the inner human being, but not necessarily the entire person is projected in their art. Definitely not the entire God is projected in the artistic work of his creation. So, Goyla definitely, but that's only the elementary level of the divine. But we have to realize that an Aleph is multi-layered. Aleph has three dimensions in it. The lowest level of Aleph is what we're talking about, is the godliness vested within creation. That's called Alufay Shal Olam. The word Aleph comes from the word chief, the chief of the world, like the chief of the Indians. He's the head of the group. God is the chief of the world, the master over the world. He runs everything. But in a sense, his greatness is that this is his tribe, that this is his world. That's obviously a very nether level, a very lowly level of the divine. And we go to we upgrade the Aleph to a higher level of Aleph. And what's the next meaning of Aleph? Aleph comes from the word Alefcha, I will teach you. which is a pasuk in Eov where it says, Aleph chachma, Aleph chabina, I will teach you wisdom, I will teach you understanding. Now what's that? That's information that's higher than the world. It's higher than creation. It's representing God acting as a teacher to the world, teaching us from beyond our planet, or teaching us from beyond the universe, from outside. Knowledge coming from knowledge that is surplus to the creation. It's not understanding the reality that we're in. It's getting knowledge in our Creator that's beyond. God's letting us peek into Him, to His own private self, not as a king over the universe. That's really awesome. And that's the Aleph Chachma, Aleph Chabina. I will teach you. It takes God to teach us. In general, we're going to see that's Torah. Torah is not just a discovery about what's here. God is teaching us. As we know, Torah Kadma L'Olam, Torah precedes the world. And then finally, there's the third level. And the third level of the word Aleph is, we're taken to the third lesson of the Aleph, or what the Aleph means. Aleph comes from the word Pella. Pella means wonder. Aleph Chachma, Aleph Chabina means we're lucky, we're fortunate to get teachings. Teachings of the master teacher, teachings of God Himself. He will teach. But He's teaching knowledge. Knowledge means it's something that is knowable. Obviously, without a teacher like God, you couldn't know it. But it is knowable because God is teaching you. When God teaches you, you can know it. But then there are things that are such deep, high truths that are not knowable. They're never knowable. It's just not within the realm of knowledge. They're deep, essential mysteries. They're essentially. The Rebbe says later that the word Aleph, in this context, if you arrange the letters, you also get the word Oithel or Othel. Othel means darkness. This is essential darkness. Darkness meaning beyond. It's a mystery that can never be conveyed. It can never be transmitted. It can't be taught because it's emanating from God's very self of self, which is beyond even wisdom, and even divine wisdom is still a projection, a limited projection of God, where God infinitely transcends that, and that's called supernal darkness. And that's what we wonder about. It's a Pella, it's a wonder. And that's the third level of Aleph. And here's the secret. The secret is that in exile we encounter, the work in exile is not only about undigging the godliness of nature, the godliness of the world. The work during exile involves digging deep and deeper and even deeper. It means through our toil and exertion and challenging accomplishment, challenges and us sticking to it and doing our work within the darkness, we don't only uncover the godliness of creation, the lowest level of the Aleph, but we achieve and we connect and we even are able to tap the highest dimension of the Aleph, which is the wonder of wonders. And yet, even that is the Aleph being revealed in Goyla, in Golos, because it's connected to God, to Golos. So the entire Geula is connected all to our Avodah in Golos. What an unbelievable revelation we're given over here. So he goes into that. That's the general theme. Then he goes into explanation and he explains it as follows. The first thing is godly revelation that has a relationship to the world. So what we said earlier, Aluf Shal Olam, master of the world. Then stage number 2 is godly revelation that transcends the world, but the way the Rebbe refers to it over here is it has a shaykhus to the world. It has somewhat of a relationship to creation, to existence. And it could be on some subtle level referred to as a source for creation. It's beyond creation, but yet can lead somehow into creation. And then there is Gili Elokus that is completely beyond the world, in a way that it is removed and separated, with absolute separateness. These two latter dimensions, one is beyond the world but perhaps has a connection to the world, and one that's totally one that's beyond, without any connection at all, are two dimensions of Torah. There is Torah of its own, where we say Torah kadma la'olam, Torah precedes the world. But by saying that it precedes, that already gives it somewhat of a relationship, because when one thing precedes the other thing, it's higher, it's beyond, but it's still connected. And then there is a dimension we can't even say it precedes. It's like we say, it's beyond being beyond. It's past being beyond. It doesn't have any. There's nothing to say even about it. And that's the wonders of the Torah. So in Torah itself, there's the Torah, and there's the wonders of the Torah. So there is nature, Torah, and the wonders of the Torah. So the first thing is, as it applies to Goyla, as it applies to Golus, it means to recognize God in everything in the world. That's where we start. That's the elementary level. Elementary level is that the world stop blocking on godliness, to reveal how God is the master over the world. Now, that takes work, and that's why we're in Golus, because we're here to uncover that. Because the way God created the world is that He hid the power of the Creator that's within the creation. Even though, as we know, that God created, not only does He create, but He constantly creates the world every second, as the Baal Shem Tov teaches, that there is a Dvar that Hashem is continuously creating and recreating the world every second, right? But still, the world, physicality is created in a way that it obscures it, it hides it. And that's our avoda. God put us in this world, we might say, to crack the shells or to peel away the shells and expose the inner fruit that's within nature. And we'll see that's the way Jews are within the world, across the world, and we bring godly consciousness to our Gentile neighbors, to the world around us, and actually to the actual physical matter of the world too. We change its dynamics through our Torah and mitzvahs, adherence to God's will, that creates a purification in the world, that the world starts becoming, first, from it being opaque and completely blocking, it becomes translucent, and from being translucent, eventually becomes transparent. And we can literally see in everything the divine energy that flows in it. That's like we say, the Yeda Kol Pol, that all, and we daven on Rosh Hashanah, that every effect should know that you are impacting it. Ki ato pi altai, that you, God, are the one that's making it. Which is where, in many ways, the world is holding now. The discoveries of science at this point is already pointing to a being that's creating everything. Yesterday we had a Farbrengen with one of the speakers were Dr. Goit. You can look it up on COL. I highly recommend listening to that. I didn't listen too much. I had to speak as well, so I was preparing what to say, and my mind was not free exactly to listen, but the little bit that I heard from Dr. Goit, I think his name is Goitfried or something like that, a Chassidic scientist, was awesome. And he was talking about discovery where the world is holding already at this point, where they're not admitting that it's God, but they're admitting already to a singular. I don't know how he referred to it in a way that you would think you're reading what that scientific conclusion. You would think that that's literally a passage in Tanya. That's what Torah says, because the world, that's the zichuch, that's discovering the divinity, the godliness that's within creation. But then comes the next stage. Next stage, that's not all that we accomplish in Golus. Through our avodah in Golus, we accomplish the next stage, and that is what we call the next level of Aleph. Aleph from the word opana. Opana means a teaching. So I'm teaching you something from beyond, something that you don't have. And as we said before, Aleph chachma, I will teach you wisdom. Aleph chabina, I will teach you. And that's referring to the godly revelations that we don't experience during Golus. We don't see it. During Golus, we can experience the divinity. It's also hard, but we could, if we dig and work, we can find the godliness within creation. But by the Geula, which is a result of our work in Golus, we'll be exposed to higher teachings, to Chachma and Bina, that's from beyond the world. That's the Lakus that's higher than creation. Where is it coming from? Coming from Chachma and Bina. It's called Moichin. Now we know that how many days that creation stems, the power that God activated in creation, is his power of his midos. Midos are his divine emotions, which we talk about now, where we're engaged in during Sfiras Omer, now is Malchus Shebenetzach. So we're doing the Spheras, and we're counting the 7 attributes. They're called Shivas Yemei Abinyan, the 7 days of construction. They're related to the creation. God exercised or revealed or channeled his emotional energy to create the world. Emotions are all about relationship. And an emotion is how I feel towards something, someone other than myself. I feel kind towards them. I feel disciplining towards them. I feel anger towards them, or whatever the emotion is. So these are emotions towards the outside, and refers to God's relationship to the world. Intellect is more of a private experience within a human being in one's inner world. Your knowledge doesn't have to have any relationship to anybody outside of you. And in general, we find that people that are intellectuals are more introverted, like to sit in their own world, explore, don't have to socialize. Emotions calls for socialization. Intellect calls for isolation. That could be the reason why God put us into, there's a certain lack of, here's a Mashiach thought, could be the lack of interaction with the outside, and we're becoming more inward bound. Hashem sat us in our homes, is maybe that, was we're going to see soon in the later in the Shir, maybe that's a hachana. This just hit me right now. Maybe that's a little bit of an acclamation for more of an inward experience of moichin. The world that we're experiencing now is a world of midos, which is external, and that's the 7 days of creation. But Aleph chachma, Aleph chabina means Hashem is sharing with us chachma and bina, which transcend creation. Alpine, like the pasuk says. Kadma lo'olam, Chachma and Bina is Alpine, that says Torah is 2,000 years before the world. What's 2,000 years? Why dafka 2,000? Because 1,000 for Chachma, 1,000 for Bina. And because that's the Mochin. The Mochin precede creation. So where do we experience that godliness? Where does that come through? That will not come through investigating. The Rambam says, how do you get to know God? The Rambam says, by exploring nature, looking at the magnificent world that God created, and thinking about it, and thinking how all these things, how these function in such a masterful way, you get to know Hashem. But you only get to know Hashem, as we said before, you get to know the artist through their art. And that's only a very narrow sliver of the artist. To get to know the true greatness of the artist, their personal self, that could be totally beyond the art that they're making, you can't examine their art. You need to already access their brain. And God shares his brain with us, his private self, through the Torah. So Torah is already a higher godly revelation. When we experience Geula, we also get Torah on 2 levels. When we went out of Mitzrayim, we got one aspect of the Torah. When we're going to go out, when Mashiach comes, we're going to get even a higher level of the Torah. Pnimius Torah, it's going to be revealed. That's the godliness from beyond creation. So that's the second level. It's all there in the Aleph. And then we come to the third level of the Aleph. We get to even a higher level of Aleph, which Aleph is the word Pella, which this is referring to the wonders that are going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. Like it says in the pasuk, like as the days that you went out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. And the wonders that Hashem are going to show us are going to be even wonder compared to the wonders when we went out of Egypt. And this includes the wonders of the Torah. Actually, we started saying Kapitel Kuf Yotes, the Rebbe's Kapitel now, Kapitel 119. And in that Kapitel, it says, Gal Einai, open my eyes, Va'abita, and I will see Nifla'ois Mitayrasech, I will see wonders of your Torah. So we're holding at that point. To see the wonders of the Torah is going to be the Torah of Mashiach. And that's already a level of wonder. That means in Torah itself, it's in Torah, which is God's brain, it's the Pnimius HaMoichen of the Eibishter. It's the Hashem's essential Moichen. Not, as we're going to see in a moment, the Moichen that are Shayach to the Midos. 2,000 years, the Torah comes before the world. It already makes a relationship with the world, and it also puts it within the context of time. 2,000 years. prior to the world. But really, prior to the world, there is no time, but that's completely detached from the world. And that's the level of Pnimius HaMochen, the inner part of the Mochen, that doesn't have any relationship to the emotions. The real intellect, as it is for itself. And here we're talking about God's true intelligence. And I mean, obviously we can talk about this and not totally not get, not do you realize we are baffled. We're baffled. We're baffled by the universe. And we know nothing of the universe. And especially the deeper secrets of the universe, with all the exploration. And when we do see it, we're baffled by it. And that's only the godliness. And that's a little tiny crumb of the wisdom of the divine that's within the universe. And here we're talking getting exposure to teachings of God from beyond, which is God's mind preceding his emotions. And then we're saying, but even that, even the divine intellect, it's already related to the emotion, produces the emotions. But then there is the divine intellect as it stands completely separated. And that too is revealed. And when we say it's going to be revealed, the chidush is, the novelty of it is, that how is it going to be revealed? Not on a level that remains beyond us, that shocks us, that overwhelms us, in a way that the deeper Aleph, the Aleph of a wonder, somehow, even though it's incomprehensible, becomes comprehensible and enters into a teaching, into a formula of teaching, because Mashiach is going to teach these nifla'os. They're wonders. They're not teachable material. This is things that are not, this is truths that are not within the context of being able to be taught. And yet the higher Aleph channels into the second level of Aleph, which Aleph means teaching, which eventually comes down into the third level of Aleph, which means it will be revealed in the world itself, in the universe, in the physical world. In the third level of Aleph, where Hashem is Alufay Shalaylam, the chief of the world. In the art itself, we will see the pnimius, the essence of the artist, that which is not teachable even. Then the Rebbe goes and frames these three ideas in Chassidic terminology, Kabbalistic terminology, Chassidic terminology. He says the lowest level, what's called Alufay Shalaylam, the lowest level, that's Sfiras HaMalchus, because as we know, Malchus, kingship, that's the koyach hapoyel benifal. That's the power of God that God releases into creation. Because how did Hashem create the world? Next week's Pirkei Avos, not this week, but next week. Basara mamareis nivra olam. With 10 utterances, God created the world, and it's, as it explains in Shara Yichud V'Amunah from the Alter Rebbe, from the Baal Shem Tov, that it's the mamareis themselves, it's the words themselves, it's the letters of God themselves that constitutes the chayos, the life force. It creates everything. So that's actually invested in the world. That's and speech. Oh, and the next connection is speech is Malchus, as it says in Pasach Elio. Malchus peh. Malchus is the mouth. That's the speech, and just like kingship, a king rules and connects to his subjects through speech. So that's the lowest and the most external level of God. Communication, divine communication. That's called Alufay Sholam. God as a chief over the world. God as the source and the conductor of nature. Higher than that, and the Rebbe says, included in that level is not only Malchus, but even a level that transcends Malchus, which is called the Ze'er Anpin, the 6 emotions. They're also included in Alufay Shalaylam, because even though God interacts with the world through Malchus, but the energy that is, Malchus doesn't have anything of its own. The energy that flows into Malchus to be the power behind the speech are the divine emotions. So when God actually created the world, on Sunday He created it through His emotion of kindness and so on. Gevura, each one, the emotions are completely, the emotions are the source at least of the energy that later is transmitted in the literal sense into the world through Sfiras HaMalchus. Therefore, when we say Alufay Shalaylam, master of the world, we're referring to both Malchus and even what we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shechina, and even HaKadosh, even one that which is transcendent. But since it's also Baruch means it's also related to the creation, that too is all included in the lowest level of the Aleph. Beyond that is higher than the midos. And that is Chachma and Bina, Chabad, Chachma and Bina. Which Chachma and Bina, as we said earlier, these are the level of Moichen. And Moichen is higher than midos. And as we said before, this is for yourself, not to the outside. And imagine what we're saying, that's when God teaches us Torah. That's why we say a person, it is justifiable. It makes sense. It is only logical and reasonable for a person to segregate themselves, close themselves, and actually study Torah day and night, abandon the entire world. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos actually says that. Kachu darka shel Torah. The way of Torah is you should sleep on the ground, eat a tiny bit of bread and a little bit of water. Pas melach, eat bread with salt. Doesn't say tiny bit, but eat bread with salt. Meaning bare minimum. Maayon b'meshura, take an earthen vessel. You don't have any fancy utensils. Sleep on the ground and b'toirat ha'amal. And ashrecha, how fortunate are you? They say, why are you fortunate? This means a person has literally forgiven or forego, or how do you say that in the past? Forgoed. On everything, on every pleasure of life for the pursuit of Torah. Is this person very pious? Are they very holy? Are they very pious? Are they very, very, very great saintly? No, actually, if you're saintly, you don't do that. Because saintlyhood, you care more about what God wants, and that's not exactly what God wants of you. God wants you to take care of His world, besides for a few people. So that's not really saintlyhood. That is the ultimate selfishness, but a good a positive one. At least if you're selfish and you're caring about yourself, you're looking out for yourself. That is the greatest thing you can grab for yourself. You want to take for yourself something that is meaningful and quality. Study Torah all day. Now, why is that? Why is that justified? Justified because the value of God's brains is infinitely more than God's speech and God's emotions. And in the world, what's the world? What's the entire experience of life with all of its pleasures and all of its ecstasy and all of its experiences? Everything, all the money in the world and everything it can buy you. It's only the divine speech and divine emotions, not the intellect. And here you're accessing God's intellect. That's what Torah is. But the Rebbe says even the intellect that's revealed in the Torah is only the lower part of intellect. The intellect that is related, as we said before, Aleph chachma, Aleph bina. I will teach you 1,000 years of chachma and bina, which means it's related. 2,000 years. The Torah precedes the world, means it has a relationship to the world. Moichen ashaychem lemidos. It's the mochen that have a connection to midos. What is the real deep level of the Aleph? Which leads us to the third level. The third level that we're talking about is what we call etzem ha-moichen, the essence of the moichen. The essence of God's intelligence, which compared to the lower level, there's no comparison. No comparison whatsoever. That level is called Pella, which is completely unknown. It's a wonder. The difference between the word Alephcha and Pella is Alephcha means I will teach you. It's teachable. It might be a deep mystery, but it could be taught. This is closed, Pella. It's a wonder. It's not, you can't touch it. You can't know it. And even deeper, the Rebbe says, it's the mochen, the etzem ha-mochen, when they're still in the subconscious, so to speak, of God. And in the pnimius of the pnimius, keser. Pella, the real meaning of keser is not just chachma and bina in their pristine state, but higher than that, keter, keser, that's pure Ein Sof. That's the very, so to speak, the very substance of the divine, substance of the Eibishter himself, unrelated to anything outside of him. And that's the third level of Aleph. And all these three levels of Aleph are made accessible to us where? During the time of the Geilah. The Yeduan is known, the Rebbe says, and that's where we find, so now how do we know that we'll ever, here's the question. Okay, so if that exists, nice, but how do we know that we'll ever access that? That the third level of the Aleph is also meant for us. The answer is, first of all, the very fact that we know about it is a sign that if it wouldn't be for us, why would we know about it? The fact that the third dimension of Aleph is also something that we talk about must be that for whatever reason it does have a shaykhus. Now where do we find that? So today's days, we know that when our main avoda is really working with our mochen, we work with our intellect to fix our midos. This is connected strongly to Sfiras HaOmer. During the time of Sfiras Omer, we have to repair our emotions. How do we repair our emotions? By applying our intellect. By learning Torah, we apply our intellect, God's intellect, and repair our emotions. But our main work is the 7 midos. We don't really, today's days, have, that's what I mentioned earlier regarding this isolation period. Today's days, we don't really have the avoda of pure mochen, pure intellect for the sake of intellect, and connecting to God through pure intelligence. That's going to be after Mashiach comes. And that's why when Mashiach, we learned a long discourse about this in the summer. That's why when Mashiach comes, God is going to give us not only the land, Israel is going to expand, not only to be the land of 7 nations, it can be the land of 10 nations. Adding 3 extra nations, Keni, Knizi, and Kadmoni, which those 3 nations correspond to Chabad. But when we say Chabad, it means the mochen when they're not connected to the midos, the pure mochen. And that's going to be related to Pnimiyas HaTorah that's going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. And we're going to do work there that's not unrelated to purifying the way we feel. It's just pure intelligence. The godliness that's going to come as a result of that is going to be accessing the Eibishter's pure mochen. Which means that even the Aleph, the very end Aleph, we're going to connect. But that too is connected to our Avodah in Golus. It's not a post-Mashiach new project. It's connected to the pre-Mashiach world. What is that ultimate revelation? The Rebbe says it's basically what we're talking about is to know the Pella, Pnimiyas HaKeser. What it really means is Gilui Atzmos. It's the revelation of God's very essence. Okay. So now in Perek Hey, he says like this. So now we'll understand that the Chiddush of the Geula, the Chiddush of the redemption, Goyla b'Tosfos Aleph, by revealing the Aleph in the word Goyla, it includes all 3 in Yanam of the Aleph. Alufa Shaloilam, Ulfana, and Pella. All these 3 things. And Dafka al Yidei Avodah B'Golus. That's the beauty. Dafka through our Avodah now. Through bringing the Aleph, the 3 in Yanim in Goyla, comes the Geula. V'chol shloishes in Yanim v'adargisha, but all 3 in Yanim. One is Gilui HaKoyach HaPoyel B'Nifal, revealing the maker in the thing that's being made. As we said earlier, V'yeda Kol Po, Ki Alta, when Mashiach will come, through our work now, we will bring to everybody's knowledge, Ki Ata Pi Alta, that you, God, have made it happen. That's Malchus, lowest level. We reveal God as a king over the world. Then we also, through our Avodah in Golus, we also reveal the perfection of Torah. We cause Torah to be revealed, which is the Ulpana, the Aleph Nalash and Aleph Chai will teach you. Limudat Torah, which is godly revelation that's beyond creation, which is, we said before, it's the Moichen, but the Mochen that's related to the Midos. And finally, the Avodah in Golus will also cause the Gilui of the Niflois, Moichen Be'etzem Keser. These 3 levels. What does that mean, he says? We're not satisfied. We don't feel accomplished just because we've discovered the godliness of nature. That's not enough, but we're digging deeper. How do we uncover these 3 levels? And this is important to note. How do we move from level to level? So the first level, the lowest level, the most basic level. Now we have to know what is the avoda that connects us to all 3. So the Rebbe says something really special. Everything over here is special, but this is really nice. He says the avoda of uncovering the godliness of nature is through our natural life with godly content. By us doing everything that we would do naturally, that is part of the nature of the world. 7.5 billion people eat, but as a Jew, or as any person that wants to connect to this higher way of living, is you're eating and you have a godly purpose in your eating. On the lower level, it means you're eating so that you can be strong and healthy and serve your Creator. A little deeper than that is to be able to know God in the food itself. That means while you're eating, you're contemplating how all the aspects of this food is so marvelously godly, how how this, if you ever think about when you're eating a good dish, and you think about, instead of getting lost in your pleasure of it, but maybe you had that experience of pleasure and delight, and you think about it, and then you stop for a moment and say, wow, how many things contributed to this dish? So you're thinking, well, this pasta has pasta. So you start thinking, where does the pasta come from? That's wheat. And you really trace it back to plain earth. And you say, how in the world did it become from earth pasta? And you think about the marvelous machine that God created, production plant called planet Earth, which the earth can produce wheat, and wheat can be turned into such a nurturing thing, like pasta. But you're thinking, well, it's a good pasta, it's got garlic in it, it's got good tomato. You're thinking about a garlic, it's not like, where does the garlic come from? Earth didn't just give you a nutritious food, but it gave you something that has such an ability to create such a unique taste, like garlic and tomato and this and that. You start thinking all these details of what is in it, and you're suddenly impressed with God. You feel great being a creation of God, and you say, well, I want to get to know him a little better. He's awesome. Master chef. So from eating pasta, you know God. And obviously pasta is just one possibility, and that's everything else. So that's the knowing of Hashem in the natural things that we do. And that's elementary level. And on the lowest level of doing that, we discover Alufay Shaloylam. Then the next stage, you want to get godliness that's outside of creation, in creation, and we do it during the time of Galus. That means that you set aside every day time where you're studying Torah. When you're learning Torah, you're connecting to the godliness that's beyond creation. So you're now on a much higher frequency. Eating is good. Marveling at God's greatness when you're watching a sunset, or taking a hike, or whatever it is that you're seeing, and you're saying, wow, you went to the zoo or to the aquarium, and you're looking at the magnificent creations. That's Alufay Shalaylam, that's Malchus. Take it a step deeper. Probe God's mind through Torah. And then even greater than that, you don't just learn Torah, but you learn Pnimius HaTorah. You're learning Chassidus. You're learning the Torah of the future, which originates, and what it really is in its essence, it's teachings from the unknowable, from the inner Pnimius of the Ebershter's Moichin. And then the Rebbe adds something very powerful. To further explain this last Nakuda, which is uncovering the Pella, the wonder in Gola itself, that in Gola itself you should connect to the level of Pella. So it's one thing to say, when you're in Golus, you'll learn the secrets of the Torah. So that's how you're connecting it to the Golus. But then it's not inherently connected to Golus, because you could have learned the Pnimius HaTorah when you were not in Golus. You didn't have to be in Golus to learn the Pnimius HaTorah. But the Rebbe now therefore wants to make the connection even stronger. And he says, V'yesh Loima, we can say that the real discovery of the level of Pella, wonder, and related to Gola, is when we discover and explore the godliness of exile itself. Because exile doesn't make any sense. Exile, with the horror, and especially the long duration of time of this never-ending exile, that seems like it's we're not getting fartik with it. It's not expiring. Like we've done everything already. So it reaches a point where it doesn't make any sense anymore. It becomes completely senseless. So he brings from the Tzemach Tzedek that on that there is a pasuk. There is a pasuk. It says, "Oidcha shimcha," I will thank you, God. Ki asisa Pella, you've done a wonder. And what is this referring to? Arichus hagalus, the length of galus. Now we're kicking and screaming, and we're bolting on the door, and we're saying, "Get me out! Get me out! Get me out! Get me out! Enough!" Like the Rebbe would always say, "Dalai galus, enough! Ad masai, we can't stand it." But the moment we're on the other side, we say, "Oh, thank you, Hashem, for that galus." Because then we're going to have the wisdom and understanding to understand and appreciate why we had to endure all of this, and how dafka through that darkness, incomprehensible darkness, we're coming to the incomprehensible revelations of Mashiach. Like it says, when Mashiach will come, we're going to say to Hashem, Oitcha Hashem, we're going to thank you, Hashem, ki anafta bi, that you have rebuked me. So when we can discover the secret of the exile itself, and if you think about it, one of the things the Rebbe has been doing for the last so many talks, many years, is, on the one hand, he was charging us and creating within us such strong desire for Geula, but on the other hand, he always was explaining how the Golus, there's a deeper reason to the Golus. The Golus is how the Golus itself is part of the Geula in it, because that's part of uncovering the Pella. There's godliness of nature, creation, and then there is the godliness of the things that seem atrocious in creation, which don't make any sense how they exist in God's world, which, of course, is very easy for a person to just, kick the door and say, you know what, I don't understand, there can't be God, whatever, I don't believe in God because of all these things that are happening that are just so incomprehensible. Or there is the understanding that he must be up to something. And whatever God is up to is such a mystery, coming from the mysteries of his very essence. And by probing that, that's clearly where the Pella is revealed in the Goyla. And as a result of doing that, when Mashiach comes, we experience the Pella not in the setting of the exile, but we experience it in its pleasurable state. And this all leads us to all of this at the Geula Hasidim. The Rebbe actually says, I'm just going to conclude with, there's a very Geshmak Ha'or over here, Ha'or 75, in which he says that these three levels of Aleph, obviously going to be in the future redemption, but we find that already by Yetzias Mitzrayim as well, we already find that we had all of this. Because by Yetzias Mitzrayim, we had the revelation of Alufa Shalom, that God is a master over the world, seen specifically by this, that the Egyptians themselves were helping the Jewish people out. They supported the Geula, as we spoke earlier. But in addition to that, there were wonders. Like we say, the wonders that are going to be in the future are compared to the wonders of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which means that Mitzrayim, there was also wonders. And especially since by Yetzias Mitzrayim, as we know, was a preparation for the giving of the Torah. And by the giving of the Torah, what was revealed? Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Anoichi is Keser. So you see, not just Alufa Shalom, Pella was revealed. And especially since we said that where is the real Pella going to be revealed? In Pnimius HaTorah, and the secrets of Torah, they're going to be revealed after Mashiach comes. But really we know that there's no new Torah. Everything that's going to be given in the future is there in the Ten Commandments. It's all there in the Torah. It's just it's hidden in a way that we can't extrapolate it, but it's there. And when was it given to us? By Matan Torah, which means that really, by the giving of the Torah, we already were Zoiche, we already were downloaded to us the three levels of the Aleph, even the third level of the Aleph. We also see by Matan Torah, they had revelation of Meiser Merkava, which means of the element of the chariots, and there was a temporary experience of what's going to be when Mashiach comes, of Atar Reis Aladas. Ki Hashem Elokim, that you can literally see that God is everything. And more specifically, he says, Matan Torah happened after Sfira. And by Sfira Sa'omer, we find this progression. Because Sfira Sa'omer, first we count 49 days. With 49 days, as we said earlier, related to the 7 emotions. 7 times 7 is 49. All the details of the emotions. But as a result of us counting 49, we merit the revelation of the 50th level. 50th is already Bina. It's higher than the emotions. It's what we spoke earlier, like Chachma and Bina, beyond the Midas. And in a Chassidus and Likutei Torah, it says that in Bina itself, there's two levels. There's the external part of Bina, like we discussed earlier, the Mochen that is Shayach to the Midos, and then there is the Pnimius of the 50th gate of Bina, which is beyond. And the lower level, he says, comes as a result of our work. We can't access even the lowest level, but we can do whatever we can on the 49, and as a result of our work, we're rewarded with the lower level of the 50th gate. The higher level of 50th gate is not compensation for our work, because it's so beyond that we can't even get it as a compensation. Instead, it's a total gift from above. After we've done our 49, and as a result of our work, we get the 50th, comes the deeper element, which that deeper element is what we, in our conversation here, is related to the third level of the Aleph, which is the word Pella. So you see that it's there, in a nutshell, it's there by Yetzias Mitzrayim. But the Rebbe says a big difference. There, it was a temporary revelation. God gave us everything in that moment, but then it was hidden from us. What remained is the revealed Torah, the second level. Aleph Chachma will teach you Chachma. That remained. But the third dimension of Aleph flashed for a second, and it went back into concealment. When Mashiach will come, it's going to be permanently revealed. And next week we're going to learn, this is Gewaldig, how Mashiach Tzedkenu himself has to have these three levels. Because since he's the one who brings the Geula, just like in Golus he shows, the Avodah comes by discovering three levels of Aleph in Geula. Mashiach has these three levels in him, as we're going to see. Be'ezras Hashem. Tune in next week, Wednesday night, for the completion of this.